Last summer, I wanted a new car. The old one I had wasn't working well anymore. I had it for 2 years, and when I took it to the car repair place, they told me it needed lots of fixing. I didn't think it was worth fixing it, so I sold it. I had a little money saved up and thought I'd buy another car. I usually bought cars from Craigslist, where people sell things they don't want anymore. So I started looking on Craigslist for a good car. I borrowed my parents' extra car to get around while I looked. After a bit, I found a car that seemed great. It was a 2010 Subaru Forester, and it wasn't very expensive. I knew that this type of car got bought quickly, so I sent a message to the person selling it right away. The person who was selling the car, I thought a lot of people might message him because it was a good deal. I asked him if I could come see the car that day. He told me he was working, but he could meet me later in the evening. He said to meet at a big grocery store parking lot close to where he lived. I drove to the place he told me to go. I got there a little early, at around 8 p.m. The store was closed, and the parking area was big, but I was the only car there. I let the seller know I was waiting. He messaged me back saying he'd be there soon. Soon, I saw another car drive in, but it wasn't the Subaru I was expecting. It was a regular-looking white car. The car parked near me. A young man got out of the white car and started walking to me. I got out of my car too. He said, "Hi, I'm Al." I said hello and told him my name. I was a bit confused. I asked him about the Subaru Forester I was expecting to see. Instead, he pointed at the white car, which wasn't a Subaru at all. I told him I was here for the Subaru Forester, not this car. He looked at me for a moment, then he started laughing, but it sounded like he was also kind of nervous. He said sorry and told me he brought the wrong car. He explained that he was selling more than one car and got mixed up about which one he was supposed to show me. He took out his phone, maybe to check some details or messages. As he was busy with that, I noticed something weird. In the back seat of his white car, I saw the top part of a person's head peek out for a second and then quickly hide again. It looked like there was a grown-up hiding there. I felt a little scared. I asked Al who was in his car. He seemed surprised and said he was alone. I told him I was sure I saw someone. Al said he understood the confusion. He realized I was here for the Subaru Forester, not the white car. He said sorry again for bringing the wrong car. I asked him if he was like a car seller because he had more than one car for sale. But he said no, just that he had a few cars he was trying to sell right now. By this point, I was feeling uncomfortable. It was dark, and we were alone in a big parking area. Al tried to get me to look at the white car. He said he could give me a good price, and I could even drive it to see if I liked it. But I wasn't interested. I told Al again that I was sure someone was in his car. He walked to his car and looked inside. He then rolled down the window and told me it was empty. Without saying anything else, he just drove away. I quickly went back to my car and left for home. When I was safe at home, I kept thinking about what happened. The whole thing felt very strange. I wondered why Al acted so weird and who was hiding in his car. I tried to find the online ad for the Subaru, but it was gone. The next morning, I thought it was a good idea to tell Craigslist about what happened. I wanted to make sure nobody else met Al and got into a dangerous situation. Even now, I still wonder who that person was in Al's car. I don't know if they wanted to hurt me or if they had bad plans for other people too. What worried me the most was that Al had more than one car for sale. It felt like he might try to trick many people. A few weeks ago, I thought about selling my TV online. I had just bought a big 65-inch screen and still had my old 55-inch one. The older one was still good, just not as big as the new one. I had limited room in my house, and since I didn't need 2 TVs, I thought it'd be a good idea to sell the old one. I hadn't used online selling sites before, but I chose to try Craigslist. I live in a place where many people use it. Soon after I posted the TV for sale, I got a text. It was from a guy named Bob. He told me he liked the TV and wanted to come see it. We discussed a time, and I told him to come by in the afternoon. I kept the TV in my living room close to my front door. I made sure it was turned on so Bob could see it working when he arrived. Right when he said he would, Bob sent me a text saying he was outside. I peeked through the window and saw a blue car. A man stepped out and started walking towards my house. I opened the door and we said hello. He looked young, maybe in his mid-20s, with short yellow hair. I led him into the living room and pointed to the TV. "Here it is," I said, "just like in the pictures." I wanted him to see that it was working perfectly. I was hoping he'd agree to the price I'd listed, but I was also ready to hear if he had another price in mind. Bob stared at the TV. He moved around, checking it from various angles. After a while, he said, "I don't know if I can pay for this." Without another word, he left my house. I felt a little frustrated. After all, he'd seen the price before he came, but I thought, it's okay. Someone else will buy it. Throughout the day, I got more texts. 2 people asked about the TV. One of them seemed very interested. That night, as I was sitting down watching my brand new TV, I was feeling a bit sleepy. The noise from the TV was really loud, and I was nearly closing my eyes when I heard something. It was a faint sound, almost like someone was trying to be quiet. I turned down the TV and tried to listen carefully. It sounded like it was coming from the hallway window right across from where I was sitting. I tried to focus and looked over, but nothing seemed out of place. Maybe I was just hearing things. I went back to my show, but not long after, the noise started again. I looked over again, and this time I got the shock of my life. My window was wide open and I could see a hand reaching in. I was so scared that I couldn't move or scream, and before I knew it, someone was climbing inside. The room was pretty dark, with only the TV's glow lighting it up. But as the person got in and stood up, I could see it was Bob, the guy who came to see the TV earlier. He seemed just as surprised to see me. Maybe he thought I'd be asleep or out. He quickly demanded my phone and wallet. I really didn't want to give him my phone because then how could I call for help? But I was too scared to argue. I told him my wallet was in my bedroom. He wanted to know where that was, so I pointed it out. He told me to stay put and slowly moved backward, always watching me. Even though I didn't see any weapon, I wasn't going to take any chances. As soon as Bob was out of sight, I ran. I bolted to the kitchen, unlocked the back door, and dashed into my backyard. I remembered my neighbor Sam, who lived a few houses down. He was a friendly guy, and I hoped he'd be home. I ran to his place, knocking loudly on his door. After what felt like forever, Sam opened up, looking surprised. I quickly went inside and borrowed his phone to call the police. By the time the police got to my house, Bob was gone. He'd taken my phone, wallet, the old TV, and some other stuff. It was a pretty bad experience, and it made me think twice about how I sell things online. Always meet in public places, not at your home. It's safer that way. Just a few days ago, I was trying to find a way to make some extra money. You see, I'm in college and I was kind of broke. Since I knew I would be going home once my college semester ended, I felt I shouldn't get a normal job at a place like a shop. I'd only leave that job in a month anyway. I needed something where I could pick my own hours, so I went online and checked out a site called Craigslist. On there I found this section where folks posted odd jobs they needed help with. Jobs like moving stuff or helping in the garden. Soon I spotted a post that was new. A guy was looking for someone to clear out his gutters. He was offering $100 for this task. The post mentioned it'd be just a few hours of work and that he'd give the ladder needed for the job. This sounded like an easy way to make money. Plus, I was fit and I remembered helping my dad clean gutters before. So I messaged him and he replied pretty quickly. Turned out I got the job and he wanted me to come over the very next day. This man introduced himself as Bob over the message. He said he'd hand me half the money, $50, when I arrive and the remaining after the job. He shared his address and off I went the next day. Now, I hadn't really been around that part of town. I was mainly there for my college stuff and didn't wander much. It was in an old part of the town, almost like a rural area. His house looked ancient and kind of worn down. When I reached, I noticed a man standing outside waiting. I guess that was Bob. I parked, walked over, and we introduced ourselves. He told me he stayed all by himself in that big old house, just him and his pet dog, Max. Bob was on the older side, but he had this friendly vibe. He quickly explained the job to me, pointing to a ladder that was already there. True to his word, he handed me $1.50 up front. So I grabbed the ladder and started the task. The house was tall with 2 main floors, and boy, those gutters were packed with dirt and leaves. It seemed like ages since anyone last cleaned them. However, I found some odd pleasure in watching them go from dirty to clean. When I was at the back side of the house, on the highest step of the ladder, I saw something really odd. There was a window on the top floor, and through it, there was a guy, looking straight at me with a strange smile on his face. His eyes had this crazy look, and I remembered Bob mentioning he lived by himself. This made me feel nervous, but I tried to focus on my work. He kept looking at me for a while, just smiling. But then, after what felt like ages, he disappeared from the window. As I was shifting my ladder to work on another part of the house, I heard a car noise. I peeked out and saw a police car parked right outside. At first, I didn't think it was for me. But then a police officer stepped out and started coming towards me. I quickly got down from the ladder to talk to him. The officer asked what I was up to. I explained that I was here to clean the gutters for Bob, the owner of the house. The officer looked surprised and told me that no one has lived in this house for a long time. Apparently, a neighbor saw me with the ladder and got worried, so they called the cops. I quickly showed the officer the online job post and our chat messages with Bob. The officer went through it, and it looked like he believed me. I also mentioned the weird man I saw in the window. He went up to the front door and knocked a few times, but no one answered. Bob was also nowhere to be seen, and I realized that a car, which was there earlier in the driveway, was now missing. I took out my phone to call Bob, but it looked like he had blocked me. The officer said I wasn't in any trouble and suggested I should just head home. They'd look into the matter. So I packed up and left, but the whole thing was so strange. To this day, I still think about that day and wonder what was really happening in that old house.